Hello, hello. Welcome to the At the Beat podcast. Just want to say, hope you all had a great 2023. Welcome to 2024. I hope it's a great year for everyone listening out there. Whether you're coming from the video that I posted about my recap episode or you're just a regular listener of the podcast, welcome. We're going to do things a little bit differently this time. Not posting voicemails. Instead, I'm going to be talking about myself, the podcast, and some other relevant things. So if you want to stick around, listen to those things. This is my first time really ever recording a podcast episode, and I got a little outline here in front of me so I don't lose total track about what I'm talking about. But just go ahead, sit back and relax, and bear with me as I stumble along about what I'm doing here. So for those who aren't familiar, maybe didn't even do any digging on who runs this podcast and who you're sending your voicemails into. Hello, my name is Philip Ward. I'm a 25-year-old male from the Midwest. I actually am an engineer as my day job. So outside of work, I do a lot of art, and this project being one of it. I've been taking pictures and making films since I was probably like 8 years old. Last October of 2023, I actually shot a short film, out in the state of Iowa, of all places, out at a farmhouse. A little like Black Mirror type episode thing. It's currently under editing process, but yeah, that's a little bit about me. I do work a lot on top of my job. Pretty much all of my free time goes to making art when I'm not spending time with people or my girlfriend. So, I do a lot of behind the scenes work. For example, right now I'm sitting in a little makeshift recording studio, got a bunch of sound panels up on the wall, a nice little mic stand to be able to sit here and record this episode and make it sound nice for you guys. So, like I said, I spend about 10, 20 hours a week on this project. Maybe I didn't say that. I don't know. It's in my head. It's rattling around in there somewhere. So, but yeah, 10 to 20 hours a week is what I spend on this project. And, and I occasionally get help, from my wonderful and beautiful girlfriend. And she helps me a lot with this project, and so do my family members and my friends at times. So, although I do a lot of the work, it isn't just me behind this. But a little bit more about me. I do have a sister and, parents, and I like to see them as much as I can. I have some buddies that, help me with this project that I spend time with as well. And other than that, I don't know if it's too smart to give out too much details, and I don't want people to know too much about me and stray away from the project here. But I know a big question of, that I get in the comments, and, people just ask me in person, so why'd you do this? So, I started this project. It started in the year 2020. I started journaling that year, and I actually received a criticism from somebody at the time that the art I was making, didn't really mean much. And unfortunately, I have to sit here and admit that person was right. And that's never a good feeling, but, at the time I was writing a lot, and I try to turn that into something beneficial for myself. So I started thinking about my art and thinking about things in my life. And at that time, I was taking ancient Greek classes. Aside from my engineering degree, I really enjoyed studying the arts, and I took classes in architecture as well. And in ancient civilizations, and specifically the Greek people, because I feel like they are the closest civilization that we had, pre-modern, that really kind of mirrors modern life as it is today. And the way their life, the way they looked at life, I should say, is really similar to how we do today. They are a much more egalitarian society, meaning that they viewed, mostly people equal. Now, it was a long time ago, so things weren't exactly that way, but, men and women definitely expressed their sexual desires, and it's pretty easy to see that in the gods that they worshipped, and they just seem more true to life in the way they approached life, and pleasure and pain and suffering. And there's actually somewhat of a motto back then that Greeks really saw life as just a conveyor belt for suffering per se. And that's kind of just a slightly poetic way of saying that life is suffering, and that you just kind of have to deal with it and look at the good things in life, and deal with all the pain and trouble that life brings. And that was kind of where I wanted to start the podcast. I've always been an observer of people. I'm really much more of a listener than a talker, especially in big public spaces. And so, I started getting this idea and writing in my journal of how I could get people in a way to let me observe them and let me really into their lives, and kind of express how they viewed their lives and their troubles and experiences. I'm reading about this ancient civilization, but I really, really wanted to get a modern sense of this account of people and their attitudes and how they're living. So that's kind of where the project started, but I didn't really know how to implement that. And this goes without saying that, this voicemail project isn't the first version of this. I know there was a thing, and I'm forgetting the name of it, where somebody left a phone line on for people to make confessions to. I think it was based in New York, and that got shut down. But I saw something on the internet. It's called the Unsent Project, where people, I believe, send in emails, and I thought that was very interesting. And so I was like, I wonder if there's a way that I could do it, where I hear people's voices, get that emotional connect. And because words can only do so much, but when you hear people talk about their lives, and this is why I think podcasts are so freaking popular in the modern age now. It really gives you, almost like somebody's in the room with you, and you can really get a feeling of what they're expressing. So, actually at the time, my friend put their phone out to the public. I think they posted on their Snapchat. I was still in college at this time. It was the spring of 2021. And because they were trying to get over their fear of, talking to people on the phone. And they couldn't answer calls. And so some of them went to voicemail, and I was like, I think this would be a good way to do what I've kind of been trying to figure out for a while. So I actually sent a text to myself in March of 2021, and it just said voicemail project idea. Or actually, no, scratch that. It said voicemail video idea. I'm looking at the text now. And that was back in March of 2021. And then I sat on it for a while, because I wasn't sure. Voicemail answering machines, they actually only have like a 20-minute limit on them on most machines. And so I got discouraged because it was like, man, like this would be a huge maintenance project of constantly having to save and erase voicemails, especially if the project got as popular as it is now. So I kind of gave up, to be honest. I just wasn't sure how it would even be feasibly possible. And I, didn't know if I could just like do it on my phone. But I ended up graduating and moving on with my life and sitting on it. And I just had it sat down in my journal. I ended up turning that text into a little journal entry about the project and what I was thinking I wanted to do. And then I sat on it for a few years. And then, what was it? Middle 2022, I always go back, and this is kind of for everyone a life lesson to always write things down. I had a mentor tell me that in college, and it's really helped me, especially in my artistic endeavors. But really just write everything down, because I ended up going back to that, and I was like, man, this is such a good idea to execute. And I was talking with my girlfriend. We had pretty much started dating at the time. She's like, yeah, you should do it, So The winter time of 2022 rolled around, and I found a service that would give me unlimited voicemail data, so I made a new phone number and gave it out to the internet, and it blew up. I was actually surprised at the response. I mean, I received over 30,000 voicemails, I believe it was. It's been a while now. It's been over a year, but it was over 30,000 voicemails on the first week of the project, and it was just overwhelming. I remember when I gave out my phone number, I actually was going to my girlfriend's family's house for Christmas time, and my just phone was blowing up. I just couldn't believe it. I mean, I still had notifications on for that service at the time, and my phone would just literally not stop vibrating. It was crazy. Like, I kept having to put my phone away in my coat in the back room of my girlfriend's family's place, and I just couldn't help myself from going to keep and checking just the number of voicemails rising and rising and rising that night. And it was really surreal experience. And going back to the idea of just writing things down, and I was just like, man, why didn't I do this sooner? So a little life lesson for you guys is, to the background of this project, write your ideas down. Don't be afraid to execute them. Going to my outline here. I just started yapping without looking at it. I already mentioned this, but now the project's over, 100,000 voicemails. And, at that time when I made it, the project only existed on my personal TikTok account. And, I was like, man, like, this would be a nightmare to manage along with my other art. It'd be kind of a wise move at the same time to make a separate project account for this. So I think like a couple of days into receiving all those voicemails, I instantly just made a project identity for everything and named it At the Beep. I had a few ideas, I was bouncing off of my friends and my girlfriend, and At the Beep just seemed to stick, and it still does. I mean, I don't know how other people feel about the project name, but, I actually really love that I chose that, and the simple logo being just the voicemail logo, and then I colored it and designed it, and I didn't design it. I mean, the voicemail logo already exists out there, and, as a generic thing, but I've been able to play with that. But I instantly made a project identity for everything, and then came out with another video notifying people of that. And then everybody flocked over there, and the response just since then has been amazing. And I've just basically been working over the past year just nonstop on this project, trying to make little promo videos along with trying to post a voicemail every day. Life gets in the way a bit, but like I went on vacation, didn't really post some, especially I went on vacation to the West Coast with my girlfriend for our 1 year, and I lost my phone, so I wasn't posting any time over there. But it was kind of annoying too, because I had a couple voicemails kind of doing really well at the time, and I couldn't really monitor it or post more. And so I just thought that was kind of funny. Life comes at you a little bit there. But I've been working on this project nonstop to try to, really get into the voicemails and get them to you guys to listen to. It's been hard, a little bit working full time, but I love it, every minute of it. I mean, I don't think I'd still be wanting to do it every day after a year if I didn't. And I get to hear so much of people's lives, and also, I wouldn't be here being able to make all of this without the help from my girlfriend or, my friends and family. Many nights my girlfriend, which we have a semi-long distance relationship. She lives about 50 minutes away from me via car. But, there's many nights she sacrifices me just working on my computer for, an hour or two. Hey, I got to post this, and, she sits back, perfectly fine, helps me sometimes, and she's a great sport about it. A lot of those videos you see that are translated, either in Spanish, my girlfriend, her primary language is Spanish, or even when I just can't seem to figure out what people are saying in the voicemails, I'm trying to write the subtitles, I go, hey, can you help me out here? And, she's got a pretty good ear. She's definitely a talker. She loves being social. So, sometimes she has a better ear for it than myself. But so moving on, I see we're already 16 minutes into this podcast. So moving on to some stats of this podcast. I already mentioned we're over 100,000 voicemails. Actually, at the time of recording this, we're at 100,161 voicemails, which is unbelievable. I can't really fathom how that many people, and obviously there's repeat callers, but, let's just assume it's mostly unique callers. Let's say 90,000 people have decided to just call this phone line. I just can't fathom that. And it's hard not to just sit here this whole podcast and say thank you. So thank you. But it's just unbelievable. I still get, on an average day, even a year later, a couple hundred calls a day. If a video is doing really well at the time, then I'll maybe get 1,000 or 2,000 calls that day. People just getting more exposure to that number, either in my links or on my profiles. And so that's kind of how calls are still continuing to roll in. So the kind of the demographics of these calls, it is really overwhelmingly female, or at least I assume to be. I can really only assume based on how people's voices sound. But, I would say for every 15 calls or maybe more, for every 15 women that call, it's probably one man that calls my line. And that is just astonishing. And, I've been trying to figure out, how do I get men to call more? And without kind of invading the project myself and being like, hey, men, call my line, instead of just letting things happen naturally, which is what I prefer. But yeah, so I mean, when I listen to these in my free time or, editing, it's almost difficult, or I'll go a long time without hearing a male's voice. And so, if you go to like break down, 1 in 15, that's about 94% female callers, which is insane. And when I look at the statistics of my project, on social media or other spaces like the podcast, it shows that it's about 60 to 70% female, which is a little lower. I'd like it to be on the 60% half, because at least that's almost, half and half. And I think like 10% or 5% is like non-binary or undefined on people's profiles. But yeah, the project is overwhelmingly female, and I don't think that's a surprise to most people. Really, I think women get a rep, or more so, I should say, men get more of a rep in society, that they're less willing to open up about things. And I think this is somewhat evident of that, But the strange thing is that when men call, it is actually drastically different than the way women call. I get a lot of women callers, and they're, either just saying hi most of the time, or, I hope everybody's doing good, and, I hope, you're achieving your goals and stuff. It's a lot of just small talk type of calls, and that's not to say they don't share some pretty gruesome or exciting stories, because they definitely do. But, a lot of female callers, they'll have those kind of filler calls come in where, they're just sharing little tidbits or, saying hi. Where when men call, it's really only one of two variations. Either they're trying to be really funny, or they are just pouring their souls out. It's rare to see male callers and just have them just say hi, and I think that kind of speaks to also that kind of idea in society where men don't feel like they have people to talk to. So I think this is their way of kind of getting something off their chest in a way, the men that do decide to call. Whether it's, something silly, like a joke, or, something more serious. So it's really interesting, even though men aren't calling, nearly as much as women, they tend to get right to the point. But Yeah, and I think this kind of statistic is pretty evident on my profiles. I mean, when you go look through the videos and hear the calls either on this podcast or on my TikTok or my Instagram, it's mostly women, and that's not by choice. These are chosen randomly, and it just happens that mostly women are calling. Some other quick stats. I say stats, but this is just kind of a rough estimate of what I've learned, because in actuality, I've probably only listened to around 5,000 of these calls over the past year. There's 100,000. It's a lot of audio data to go through, but I'd say about 15% of those calls are kind of what I call like unusable calls, where people just like I play the audio file and it's just a flat line. Nobody's saying anything. There's no noise. Or it's completely inaudible. Some people call and they might have had their phone in a weird spot, or the microphone covered, and you just can't understand them at all. So when I come across those ones, I don't use those ones. That'd just be a waste of everyone's time. And it probably hurt the project as well. And then, grouped in with those 15% of the calls, is, people that would just pick up the phone and say, hey, oh shit, and then, hang up. So, there's quite a few of unusable phone calls in there, and I don't mind those ones where people just say, hey, but, usually when I come across those, when I'm doing my random picks, I kind of just set those aside, because I just don't think that really has a place, other than maybe, where I catalog them and for the public at some point, which is a future plan of this project. And I would say another stat, which I don't think would be a surprise to anybody, because most art in the world reflects this, but about 80% of the calls are about love in some way, either about heartbreak, or, I love my mom and dad, or, I love my grandparents who passed away, or, I still love my ex, or, I'm heartbroken, I thought I loved them. About 80% of the calls, I would say, are some version of love. And I really don't think that's a surprise. I think if anybody sat back and listened to any song that you hear on the radio, or I won't even say radio, who listens to the fucking radio anymore, but any art that you consume is in some way either inspired or just directly about love, and it consumes our life, really. And so it's no surprise, love is really the driving force behind most of these calls here. And it's kind of reassuring, and when you start listening to these calls so much, and you realize you're kind of not alone. You hear all these stories about love, and everybody shares that commonality, and you kind of get reassured. Okay, everybody's been heartbroken at some point. Everybody's gone through some painful things, losing a loved one. But even all the small stuff, and I hope that's what the audience is kind of realizing, listening to these podcasts too, like myself. You really get a sense that you're not alone, and that's kind of the goal of the project. Maybe it was before the project started too, but definitely now that, I hope people listen to these calls, as I am, and kind of really looking back at and reflecting on your life and being like, hey, this was me at one point, or this is me right now, or, this might be me in the future. I might be excited about my 21st birthday coming up like this person is, or, oh man, this person lost their grandfather. I remember when I lost my grandfather. It was a pretty hard time in my life. It kind of goes to show that we're all connected, and although everybody just seems to be against each other nowadays, and I swear if you get stuck in that echo chamber on the internet of people arguing, you're like, man, there's no way I'm like that person. But really it's a big reminder every time I sit down and go to listen to these things. It's just, man, everybody's living some version of the same life, and we got a lot of the same experiences, and that's not to downplay some positions that some people are in life. Some people definitely have it way better or way worse than other people, but it comes down to it, everybody loves, everybody grieves, in some way or another. And And that's kind of what the project is at least showing me, and even like the weird stuff, people calling and just being like super goofy, or being like, or even super serious, like I cheated, like cheating's like a very serious thing, and nobody likes to either admit that they've been cheated on, or, they have cheated, but it's a very real thing that a lot of people face, and so even like the small things, or the weird stuff that people go and post, like it really, it's just a reminder that, there's so many people out there that just have the same things in their life. I got a cough. Oh, shit. Yeah, this episode actually should have came out a little closer to New Year's, but I got sick on New Year's, so went out to a freaking bar in Milwaukee, and wasn't a smart move. And kind of going back on that idea of, that weird stuff, and say like cheating, for example, because I brought that up, I think, and what I would hope people realize is, you feel a little less guilty about your mistakes that you've made in life. And not to say cheating as the only example, but any mistake. I mean, people have called and talked about many mistakes, like saying like, oh man, I regret saying what I said to my mom before she died, or something along those lines. You kind of realize that, other people have made those mistakes as well, and we're all kind of human, right? And, you kind of start to feel less guilty about making a mistake, and much more willing to admit like, hey, like I did something wrong, and so is this person, so maybe I shouldn't feel as bad as I do. And I kind of like that thought process too. Not only are they living the same lives, but they're screwing up things the way that I am too. Nobody's perfect, and it's kind of reassuring to hear that a little bit. People are more or less the same, and I like listening to voicemails too that, somebody's like, oh, when I was 12, or, when I was in high school, because it kind of reminds me that life is kind of like this cycle. I heard a song lyric recently that was like, spinning the turnstile over and over, and it's kind of true. Life just seems to be kind of a one big circle where you kind of, maybe when you're 25, you feel a little bit closer to when you were 12. And then maybe when you turn 30, you feel more like your 16-year-old self, and so on and so forth. And like at this time in my life right now, I feel like I'm closest to what I felt like when I was like a little kid, figuring out the things I liked in life and having joy for those things. I'm at that point in my life where, I'm finding joy in a lot of things again. And I'm kind of getting over this like big sad episode of my life, and so like I kind of like love hearing the voicemails of people talking about their passions and what excites them, and those are always fun to listen to, because that's where I'm at in life, and you kind of get this perspective that life is a circle. Like at one point in your life, you're like, man, I really just don't want to be on this planet anymore, and oh, now I could run through a brick wall. I'm so full of energy. All of these voicemails that I listen to feel like some kind of echo towards myself. It's really just bouncing off a wall in my room and just hitting me, as if it's something that I've said. And I'm kind of hoping that that's what other people are realizing too. This person talking is, they almost think it's them, not in a literal sense, but, in kind of a hypothetical or, metaphor kind of way. And, this theme just keeps seeming to repeat itself over and over. But yeah, I mean, it really feels like an echo, and as this project evolves more and more, it's more just like, okay, these are just all calls from myself. And it's almost like a way of therapy, where, I get to hear myself at other stages of my life, and maybe stages that I even haven't had yet. I love when older people call, because it really gives me like a sense of, what my life might be in the future and what kind of worries I have. And yet all these older callers also talk about their younger selves, and, life's just, like I said, a turnstile. It's really just this pattern. And, it seems to always be an echo of myself. And like I said, I hope that's what people are listening and realizing too. The way I like to phrase it is, I was this caller once at one point, and they are me. And, and I think that's just the extension of the human condition, and kind of going back to my Greek classes that I studied. The human condition, we're all born into it, and we all spend this life, and no matter what trajectory we're on or what we do with our careers or anything, I can hear a voicemail from a stranger and just feel exactly the same way. And that's just a phenomenal coincidence to me. And to the point of, maybe coincidence isn't the right word, but, a connection, almost a spiritual one, me being, trained as a quote unquote scientist and stuff, admitting that spiritual things exist is sometimes hard, but when things like this happen, it's kind of hard to not feel that way, that we're all connected in some way. All the literal people will be out there like, no shit, we all are subjected to the same things in life. But, when you talk about on this level, on this hive mind kind of level, it's really a phenomenal experience. And, like I said, that's just kind of what I get reminded every time I listen to one of these voicemails. When you sit back and reflect and go, this person's me and I'm them, it's also really helped me with like empathizing with other people and their problems, and gaining perspective maybe on people's mistakes and where they're at in life. Because, if I can't do that for myself, how the hell am I going to do that to strangers, and vice versa, right? So the more I listen to these voicemails, the more I feel close to strangers around me, and the more I can empathize with people. And, I'm kind of hoping, again, that that's what callers are thinking too. I get a lot of nasty comments, especially on YouTube. YouTube seems to be like just really super critical of anybody that calls, which is crazy. I think that needs to be studied a little bit, how the demographic of YouTube works. But anyways, sorry. Those comments just absolutely like throw me for a loop, man. Some of those comments are crazy. Like this girl will be like, oh man, I'm on my last leg, and they'll be like, yeah, you should end it. And I'm like, what the fuck? But I try not to convene. I've had a few times where I had, but I try to let things happen naturally, for the most part on this project, because I think that's kind of should be the intention with everything. And rare times like this, I give my input, but anyways, I hope everybody's like listening to these calls, and you may not agree with people's lifestyles or, what they're saying exactly, but I hope people are listening and being like, hey, like, this is just another human being in the human condition. And I can see them, I can empathize with them. And, I'm kind of hoping that's what callers are and listeners are, kind of realizing with how things are going and how this project is evolving. Maybe you just started listening and you're not at that point yet, but if you've been around a little while, I'd hope you've kind of grown an understanding for strangers around you and able to empathize with them a little bit. And even the more heinous things, like I mentioned, like cheating, or, maybe somebody's like, man, I got in a fight with my friend, like a fist fight, and it was my fault. Like I hit them, and, and they obviously regret it. They feel remorse for it. You might not want to do that, or you're thinking, oh, I wouldn't, I would never do something like that. But to hear it out loud and hear somebody say that out loud, it kind of gives you an idea that, hey, maybe I'm being too hard on strangers and their mistakes. And overall, not just empathizing, but this project's just kind of opened me up more as a whole, like as just a human being. I feel like I understand people more and understand what people care about, and it's actually crazy. People rarely, if ever, call about, money or fame or, all the superficial materialistic things in life. They're, people really only call to talk about people. Or talk about themselves or what they're struggling with or what they're happy about. And, that anonymity really like removes the veil, I think, when people call, because they get to really express what they are and what they care about. And, this project's really given me an understanding of what people really care about. it's so funny. It seems like people put on this act, or this materialistic act of society, and you can kind of see why when you move from society to society, either if it's the ancient Greeks or, you know, say like American society versus, excuse me, I'm, like I said, I'm still getting over some sickness here, so bear with me. But, compare like an American society with, say, like an, Eastern Asian society, or just pick any random place in the world, what people care about seems to stay the same, people and their health and things like that. And, but, the kind of materialistic thing seems to change. And I think that's just kind of society placing that on us a little bit, or maybe a lot of it. Like I think in American culture, it's really important to have like a really cool car. But in Europe, nobody, I don't think, really cares about that unless, like, you're uber rich. But, they got great public transportation, so why need to be materialistic about something that I'm already, like, benefiting from, right? And, just kind of loop back, people never really call about those things, I've got a few calls where people like, oh, man, I'm going to work really hard to be a billionaire, but those are, like, 1 in a million kind of calls, and, people really only call about people, And again, when you take art into consideration and human nature, I think that just tends to agree with what's true. Art's rarely made about materialistic kind of things unless it's like a criticism about it. And I think if you like look at this project as a whole, that's kind of what it's saying at the same time too. Like people don't call about materialistic things, so it's kind of a criticism on those things as well, which I think is kind of neat if you want to look at it in like that perspective. In total, like when I think about how this project affects me and how I see people, it's kind of broadened my perspective of emotion and my, my ability for emotion, but also like how people have emotions, people will call really and express themselves in unique ways, which I think is interesting, some people when they call about, a death, they're not sitting there crying and stuff, and they're not even saying, oh, I love them, they were great, but they're just kind of taking it as like a metaphor for life, and then you start explaining like, this person touched me in this way, in the spiritual way, and I'm going to take that with the rest of me. I think there was this one girl that called, and she talked about how, man, it was such a long time ago, so if I butcher this, but she basically called about, their dad's family friend, and how he was such a, just a positive person in life. And they're just like, I just know their impact on my soul. And, I'm just going to carry that on through the rest of my life. And, it's just so nice to hear, it wasn't like I miss them or, they should be here. It's just like, it is my duty from here on out to serve, their purpose. And, things like that, when people uniquely express emotion in that way, it's really fascinating to me, and it's kind of broadened my perspective of things a little bit too. Think about things in a more artistic and purposeful way, when grief strikes, or things of that nature. So and not only is this like a venting space or whatever, but sometimes this project can be like really like an advice board, bulletin or whatever, and like so many people leave me with little nuggets of gold of how to treat life, and some of those I've posted before, and I hope people are taking it as much as I do into my life. If I think about my family or my girlfriend or even my friends, this project has kind of taught me how to love people more and be a little bit more present, which I've, trouble with a lot of times. So, I'm kind of indebted to a lot of these callers that call and just leave, these great nuggets of advice on my line. So yeah, I mean, it's really been an awesome experience just hearing people, and it's caused me to gain like a better appreciation for life in general. The fact that everyone's kind of stuck on the same things, the same general topics in life is kind of, give me a sense that, okay, we're all in this together. or, they're all excited about the same things. I hate to always hear about the negative. A lot of people do call and vent, but even the positive things, like we're all looking forward to the same things, and so like it's got me an appreciation for life just because I can recognize that, we're all in this kind of together attitude, and, instead of sitting back and hating where I'm at or comparing myself, I can sit back and kind of appreciate life for what it is in that sense, and, another reason just to be kind of indebted to this project, it gets my head out of things a bit, makes me more present, makes me more thoughtful of, every second I have, and it makes me hate, people less, man, I know a lot of people, I say a lot of people, but, people who are sometimes chronically online, which I catch myself on sometimes, even though I tend not to answer my phone, you just see something you come across and it's hard not to have a negative reaction to things. But, this project has really helped me just kind of like calm that reactionary side of me down and really just like look at the world and being, less spiteful of things. And, the best way I can phrase it is like, since I am everyone, like that topic, that idea or theme I've expressed, everybody that's calling me is just an echo of myself, since I am everyone that exists, how can I hate them, because you really shouldn't be hating yourself. I did that for some short time in my life and I never want to go back to that again. And I don't want to feel that way towards anybody, so, I can confidently say, especially with the help of this project, I don't think there's anyone out there that I hate, so another reason to indebt people, and, everyone has their reasons of things of why they did things. And, if I feel like if I don't understand them, then, that I don't really understand people and the world around me. Another aspect about this project and, how I feel towards it is, hearing so many stories, is kind of desensitized me a bit. And I'm getting a little worried about this. When I first started listening to these voicemails and, when I first started getting all those calls in, my girlfriend and I actually sat down and listened to so many of them to start, before I posted anything. And, there are so many voicemails that just left us in tears, really. I mean, a lot of people call about insanely sad things, and it's sometimes even hard to listen to. I mean, there's ones where my girlfriend's like, I can't hear the rest of this one, or even like the lighthearted ones where people talk about, again, like how much somebody impacted their lives, it's a real tearjerker. And, but, lately it's just like when I hear something insanely difficult to listen to, it's still difficult to listen to, but I don't have that reaction anymore. And, I'm sitting here thinking, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. Because I still internally feel the same way, say somebody's talking about something really, horrible. I still get that sense of like my heart sinking and, disgust or, depending on what they're talking about. But that outside reaction, I kind of just don't have anymore. And so, I'm kind of a little worried about that. And I hope callers aren't, getting that way too. It doesn't seem like it, when I read all the comments about what people are saying. So I don't think so, but if this project exists for long enough, a lot of the long time audience might start feeling that way, and I listen to a lot more voicemails than anybody that listens to the project on the internet, but I hope to keep getting a new audience, not like replacing the old one, but keep adding more people so that, new audiences can still get to feel that, that strong reaction to certain subjects and certain excitements and such, because I think if, I just have the same audience, established for a long time, the project might get a little stale. I'm trying to fix that on my end too, it's not just the audience, but people listening, but the way I convey the project too, which I'm kind of thinking of new ideas here and there. But so another thing that's kind of affecting my life and my reaction to the project, I just wanted to throw that in there. That was a little bit of a tangent. I had that written down on my little outline here, but kind of go back to the idea of people, in relating to the project being an echo of yourself. It's really fascinating to watch how many people comment on these videos saying, I thought this was me, which is fascinating to me. And I know on the phone, especially like on that voicemail kind of filter, I shouldn't say filter. I'm not putting any filters on the audios, but like that's just naturally how voices come through phones. It's really fascinating to hear how many or see how many people think it was actually them calling, and some of it might be like people exaggerating, like because they're just saying what they're saying is like me. But, there's been a lot of genuine comments that I see, on every other video, it seems like, where people are like, man, I thought this was me for a second, which goes to show that, again, that this theme of just everybody calling is just an extension of this human condition is really insane. Even on the bad stuff, I think the one of the more recent cheating ones that I had posted, people are like, I've been in the same boat. That was me, and it's really fascinating. And I think too, when people kind of can start admitting to those awful things, and I don't really mean to say awful. That seems like too harsh of a criticism, even though that's something I never really want to deal with in my life. But even when people are starting to say, oh, that was me, I think the videos are starting to open those people up, which is just something I'm incredibly proud of. And, it's hard not to think of that, where all these strangers, and it's mostly you guys calling, that are doing this. So it's not just, me conveying this project, but people calling that are allowing people to kind of have that healing process of, that was me and I made a mistake, or that was me, I was in a low place, or, that was me, I loved this person so much, and it's fascinating to me that how much people relate even to the point where they can admit it, like I am right now, on this podcast, of how much I feel like this project and everybody calling and listening feel like me at the same time. And it's really a wonderful experience. In total, this project has given me a perspective, and I'm going to read something from a text message that I kind of sent my girlfriend when, there's kind of a rough time going on, not between us, but just with life. And I've been doing a lot of growing since I've left college, and my perspective on things, and this project's definitely accelerated that. But, a little bit of a reflection of my life, this project's kind of forced me to sit down and think about things, really, and think about the people in my life and everybody that's been in it, and all the things that have happened to me, and gain a perspective, a positive perspective on it. So I'm going to read not the entire text message, but somewhat of a text message that I'd sent my girlfriend. So let me just grab that right now. So I did some reflection on my life, and I'm going to give in my soapbox a little bit right here with this text message. So if you want to go ahead and skip forward a little bit, but, something I wanted to share, and as I kind of go about how this project affected me, I saw this quote, and this is kind of what I want to start with, where it said, I know I am good, and therefore good exists in the world because of me. And I think that's true. A lot of people, watching the news or watching, just scrolling through Twitter, man, Twitter's been such a dumpster fire. It seems like, that there's kind of the good in the world's leaving, but, it's still out there. When I listen to people's stories, and I'm kind of reading the text message and talking about it, relating to the project here, but when I listen to, all the stories of what people have been through, or what people, just talk about in general, I can't help but think, who I am today wouldn't be possible without every single thing that has ever happened to me. Who I am is because of all of those things that people usually want to run away from, and avoid about their past, or might be too sensitive to talk about. And, but, you got to kind of sit back and think all of these things are what made me who I am. And I'm thankful for that, because I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of the person I am. I'm proud of what I can be for my family and my loved ones and my friends, and the art I put out in the world. And you know, all of those things would not be possible without all of the low, high, and everything in between points of my life. And after listening to so many voicemails and, hearing all these stories that feel like me, it's hard for me to look back on anything in my life now and feel negative about it. I spent so much of my life, and I'm not lying when I say this, feeling negative about so many things in my life, and feeling sad or depressed. After listening to all of you guys and growing up a bit, I'm still relatively young. I now have gained this weird understanding that, if I feel negative about the things that have happened in my life, then I feel like I lack understanding of about my past, and then those things take power over me, and so, and I've said this many times already, this project is giving me kind of a perspective on lives and people, and why people do what they do and say what they say, and and if I lack that understanding, then or sorry, let me reverse. But if I'm negative about things that have happened to me, then I lack that understanding. That person, that thing that could have happened to me could have been a caller admitting, or saying why they did that thing, and I'm not saying that person's right or wrong. I'm just saying that there's a level of understanding, that gives you a little bit of peace in your life. And, that's kind of what this project has given me, and to kind of tie it back to the ancient Greek way of life here, cause they legitimately thought, here's actually a quote. I'm saying this from memory, from an ancient Greek, story, but, it basically goes, it's like, don't count any living man happy until he is dead. And that is not to say that that happiness is when you die, but it's more so to say at any given point your life could turn into suffering, or at any given point your situation can rapidly change. And that quote's following a story about this king who thought he had everything and then lost it all, and it was kind of like one of those moral life lesson kind of stories. And and kind of taking that along with these voicemails, people are kind of just born to suffer. That's part of the human condition, and unfortunately, that seems to be the way of the world. And but in a way, I'm kind of thankful for that, because it's offered me a perspective of the world that couldn't have happened any other way. That specific line of things who led me to who I am, is why I am. So, it's hard to be bitter about those things, how could I not in some way have love for those things that have happened, because it's caused me, and it's caused all of you who are an extension, an echo of myself, and vice versa, So I saw this other quote too, and I just love it so much, it's on one of those TikTok slideshows that, just sometimes get me in tears when I'm going to bed, and I'm just like, man, I need to get off my phone. But it said, grief is a souvenir of love. And, grief is, what that's saying is, grief is, just an after effect of our love, and what we're left with when either love exits our life, or some other way. And the way I like to say it is, I got a lot of junk, and I'm proud of that junk. All of my souvenirs, there's a lot of grief, but I'm proud of it. I'm proud of hoarding all this junk, because it's proof that I've lived life and I've loved. And I think that's kind of the point of things. And going back to 80% of these voicemails, being about that subject, people want to avoid grief, and, understandably, I don't like it either. But, when you look back on your life and think about all of that stuff and all of the souvenirs you have, I think it's somewhat something to be proud of. When somebody exits your life that you've loved, whether it be death or breakup, or, just a falling out with a friend, it's still something to be proud of, that whole attitude of, be happy that it happened, this isn't, something to be sad over. It's just the end of a story, right? So I think I'm done getting on my soapbox there of how, kind of related to me, and, what I wanted to talk about. But, my hope for everyone watching is that, you kind of look at your life and, come to these same conclusions, or, even come to better conclusions than what I'm at right now. I just hope everyone, is gaining more of an appreciation for life, and, not only appreciating the good, but the bad things in life too, not in a way that's like, oh yeah, I want bad things to happen, but more so that they did happen, and, and I gained from it in some way, and I think that positive spin, cause, the ancient Greeks had it right, we're born to suffer. So, might as well find the positive in it. And this whole project's kind of led me in that direction. And, and God, I feel like some damn freaking, like church youth group leader right now, just like, yeah, it's all positive, and I know it's not. And, I don't mean to downplay anybody's like hard times in life, but, I've been on the other side, and it's not pretty, and it's not fun, and things get hard, and you feel like you're on your last limb at times, and, life is mostly about perspective and the meaning you put behind it, and that's another life lesson I learned, not from this project, but kind of to relate it to things. Things only have meaning because you put meaning to it, some lady, might pass me wearing red, and, my favorite color is red. I might not think of anything of it, but if I take a moment and go, like, I'm going to have a good day because, that red shirt just reminded me of who I am, or something like that, just make something up. That you just gained meaning out of life, even though it didn't really exist, but you put it there, and that goes for anything in life that has meaning. And so, and I hope that everybody doing that is doing the same with their lives. And, when they listen to these voicemails and hear people talk about these things, they're starting to put meaning to things. Because I think that's what makes life worth living a little bit. How are you relating to the caller? And, do you value things the same way that they do? And I feel like the answer is probably going to be most of the time, yes. And like, as a blanket statement to kind of wrap up all of this yapping I'm fucking doing, I think life, this project's told me life would be a whole lot better to, start thinking, bad can happen, just as much as good. But, as long as we provide each other with this blanket of understanding, things will become a lot easier. If I get done wrong, I can't just look back and think about things selfishly. I got to think about the other person too, because, once again, they're an extension, an echo of myself. And life happens, life's suffering. We're no different than people were in 2000 BCE, and that's insane to me. I almost want to start talking about religion, but, to be honest, I'm not a religious person, but, 2000 BCE, that stuff didn't even exist then to even affect the way we think about life, and yet we're still thinking the same way. And it's really insane. It's really beautiful, honestly. We're a decent chunk into the podcast here, and, I think I've gotten, overstayed my welcome about talking about myself and, what I might expect from you guys. So, I'm going to move on to the more lighthearted stuff, and get more down to, other people's questions and concerns about the project. And so I'm going to go over some frequently asked questions here about, what people commonly ask in the comments about, certain things. So, the most common question I get is, what's the number and how do I call? Which, I hate to say this, I thought it'd be pretty obvious, at least, just click on my profile and, the number is just right on that link. But for those of you who might be listening to this and have no idea what this is even about, the number is 608-856-4955. And honestly, some of the reasons why the number is hard to find is because social medias actually, like, their policies prevent people from posting, like, personal information. And I remember when, actually, this is a crazy thing, and I think TikTok is good for this, but TikTok, actually, my original video on my personal profile that blew up and started this project, in the middle of it just gaining instant popularity, it got taken down because it was like personal information. But if you appeal TikTok and say, hey, like, I think this was taken down wrongfully, in which I did, an actual person will review it. And I think an actual person looked at it and said, oh, like, this is like not somebody trying to like dox or, scam or whatever, So they put the video back up and it was allowed to gain more popularity, and so I just kind of want to avoid that from happening again. Like, even if I just put text on the video or say it out loud, like, algorithms, in the modern day and age here on Instagram or whatever social media you're posting on, they can, they have audio intelligence and, things scanning the video to see if things like that get posted, so that it just stays off the platform, which it's, in most cases it's a good thing, but, for this project it's hard. So I try not to post like my direct information on anything, or at least the phone number, I should say, because it has a chance of getting pulled down and then also getting a strike on the account. And, like TikTok, for example, if you get like 3 fuck ups, like they take that, they like will delete your account. So, that's kind of a preventive thing. So on all of my social medias, there should be at least a link somewhere and where the number will just be directly displayed. So, another common question I get is, can I call outside of the U.S.? And I've looked into this. It's strange because my provider for this whole voicemail project says that I can accept calls from anywhere outside the U.S. And it helps to have an internet connection if people are calling from somewhere that depends on that. But I think it comes down to your internet service provider or not your internet, your phone service provider. And if they allow like, out of country calls, and if, you get a charge for it, and then at that point it's kind of out of my hands. So, anybody calling, I don't know how to approach the situation for, outside of the US calls, cause you should be able to call. I've actually had people from, say, the UK call me. I get somebody with a British accent and a weird phone number, and it's definitely from outside the country. So it is possible, but I'm just not sure exactly how people are able to do that. How long can the call be? So the provider I have shuts off ends your voicemail at 3 minutes. So that's the longest voicemails I'll ever post, because they get cut at 3 minutes, unless I happen to find the other call that they made and they decided to finish it. But yeah, you're limited to 3 minutes, but you can call as many times as you want. The next most common question I get asked is, how are voicemails picked? And it is pretty much a random system. I have this large database in multiple locations, so in case something random happens, like a hard drive fails, it's backed up somewhere. And since there's 100,000 calls, like, it's kind of a hard file to go and pick through. So I'll just go there and I'll pick just random ass voicemails, like a couple hundred voicemails, and then I'll put that into a little pool in another file location for when I go to edit them, and then that's what I'm picking from, like, randomly. And then, if I come across any of those junk ones that are, hard to understand or don't have anything, and then I'll just kind of like set those aside. But so yeah, it's just random, and then so it's like double random, because I pick it from that huge database, and then I pick it from that smaller file. So a lot of people ask, when will I see my voicemails? And that's a pretty difficult question to answer, because since things are random and I really don't put preferential treatment over anything other than, like, like I said, like things that don't have anything on the line, or people that just call and say hi, which I have posted before, but you could have called and then 3 days later it been on there, or you could have called a year ago and it showed up. So because it's random, I can't guarantee, and because there's 100,000 voicemails, I can't guarantee your voicemail will get featured. So that question's a little unanswerable. So I apologize about that. If you're calling just to see and hear your voice, then I'm looking into options in the future so people can do that. But I this project, as of its existence, is more just to listen to strangers. So I'm sorry if you called and that's what you're hoping for, but it's really just random of when people get posted. Where is the project? So the project right now exists on Spotify for the podcast, Spotify, YouTube, and Apple's platform. I think it's Apple Podcasts. And then for social media, it's on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And so far, that's where it exists. I'm looking to expand into other areas just, to get more people listening to your guys' calls, but that's where it's at mostly right now. Next, where is the website? So I dropped the ball on this. I naively promised the website early on. I think I just hit the mic. I hope that wasn't too loud. Early on, I promised a website, and that was pretty naive of me because what I want to do on the website is host all of the voicemails so that people can kind of click through randomly like I do and listen to them. And it won't convey any personal information, which I don't have any on these voicemails. The voicemail files only offer me the person's phone number and then the date and time they called. That's all, like as if you were just getting a call any other day on your phone line. That's all the information I get. So that stuff will also not be posted on the website, but that's kind of the future version of the website. But I dropped the ball on that. It's insanely difficult, I'm finding out, to host that many files on a website for people to randomly click through. And with my life being so busy and such, because I do so many other things and then just work and then work on this project. I couldn't really get to the finish line with that one. So that's definitely a goal for 2024 in this project. So everybody wondering where the website is. Yeah, I'm sorry I dropped the ball on that totally, but I'm figuring it out. So personal info. So a lot of people either criticize the voicemails or wonder about, personal information being shared. And like I mentioned, all I receive is the phone number, which I'll never share with anybody, and then the date and time called. So anybody calling and any personal information they share is voluntary. You don't have to share any of that stuff. So, once people share those things, it's kind of out of my hands, and I kind of take that as, they're sharing it for that reason on purpose. So, as it goes for personal information, that's really all I get. So if any callers give me any more personal information, that's kind of just where I'm left at, especially when these are picked randomly. I gotta assume that people are voluntarily giving that up, which they are. I mean, if people call, my voicemail states that it's part of a project, that's kind of expected, I feel like, out of the callers a little bit. So when it goes to personal information, that's kind of what the project entails. Any other common questions I think I've answered probably at some point along here, but I actually have a Twitter account for this project, and it's on the Linktree, but I haven't really been active at all on it. But I plan to use the Twitter account as kind of project updates and frequently asked questions. So if you have a question, feel free to go over there and at me, or look for it on the Twitter profile. I'll plan to pin like a main tweet that has a thread of frequently asked questions. But and also on that Twitter, I'll be like, I'm out on vacation, blah blah blah. Don't expect any posts. That's if anybody's actually waiting for posts. I don't know. I'm just assuming this project's kind of consumed my life. So future plans, I've already talked about kind of the website, so that's definitely still on the radar. I made, and the whole video kind of pointing at this podcast that I alluded to at the beginning. The video kind of explaining my merch, or my merch situation. Merch is definitely on my mind, and I don't know how to do that in a tasteful way, so I'm still kind of doing that. The only merch I've made was shirts and stickers for myself and my friends. So that giveaway is kind of an appreciation thing, but actually selling things, I'm not sure how to do that in a nice, tasteful way. So still figuring that out, but that's on the radar. monetizing in general, that's on the radar. I spend so much time on this project, and I would do it without money. But subtle ways of monetizing my content. I'm open to, and I'm kind of figuring out right now. So, trying my best not to be a sellout. And I understand people's criticism of that, but I'll never display like an ad or like a sponsorship like directly on the project. I think that's very, very distasteful. But, I wouldn't be, I'm not going to say no to people that want to give me a donation or something like that, for all of the work that I've put into this project. So monetization is definitely on the table for me. I haven't done that yet. I'm actually probably in the negative, like $2,000 for this project so far. So, I wouldn't quite call me a sellout yet, but that's definitely on the table for future plans of this project. And I only ever want to do it in a tasteful way. And if it's not in a tasteful way, like, please, like, criticize the fuck out of me, because, I don't want to be that, person that just cares about money, because I really don't. So anyways, and then other like ways of conveying this project, I don't want to just limit it to voicemails, but I want to express other ideas as well. I know the phone number that I provide can be texted as well. So, if people feel free to text it, I might not have an idea for it right away, but at some point, if I have a catalog of texts, I might do that some way. I'm also thinking of some sort of like live stream where people can like interact live with other people anonymously about this project. But I have a lot of other future plans that I plan to go through on this project, so I don't want to give those away, because there's actually some copycat accounts that have popped up out there. So yeah, that's kind of I think it's been like an hour and a half. Jesus, I'm gonna have fun editing this one. All in all, I hope I answered any questions, or at least gave some insightful things. Maybe, hopefully, didn't get on my soapbox too much. But with all of that being said, I just want to again thank you all for calling, and thank you for listening. I hope you all have a great 2024. I hope you're doing great. And if not, or if you are, feel free to give some more calls. I just want to let you all know that I love and understand you. So with that being said, thank you. Thanks for listening to me yap for the past hour and whatever, and catch you around. Goodbye.